Our loss ratio last year, ratio of our claim expense over our revenue, came in at 93.5, which is, it's an okay number. We had budgeted for 95.3. So again, that would have been much more inflated had we not had that additional revenue, which is the denominator of that ratio. But 93.5 is where we finished the year. Our administrative expense to revenue ratio was a decent improvement. Part of that was our cost control. We came in about $1 million or better under budget on expenses. And then again, with the additional revenue, that ratio is our admin over revenue. We came in at 9.9% versus a budget target of 11.9. 11.9 is an inflated number. We knew that with the lower membership last year in anticipation that we would hopefully have greater membership coming in 2026. We maintained some projects. We maintained some staffing in anticipation of being able to serve more members here in 2026. And that has played out nicely. We'll look at that when we get to the 2026 budget, where we didn't have to stop programs and restart them, lay off employees and try to rehire them. So that played out well for us here going into 2026. Our investment income, this is the cash that we have sitting there waiting to pay claims. Came in a little bit below budget, but still contributed $2.4 million to the bottom line. We had a budget of 2.7. The small shortfall there was basically interest rates a little bit below what we had assumed in our budget for the year. But again, 2.4 million dropping to the bottom line for interest earnings, a pretty nice contribution there. Probably the most important number, our risk-based capital ratio. This is our solvency measure, actually increased 1 percentage point from the prior year. We finished at 556. The regulatory requirement is 200% RBC. So we again finished about 2.5 times or better our regulatory requirement. This despite setting up the full liability for the payout to Caneva County, even though we've elected to pay it out over a 5-year period. We still have to reflect the full liability against our surplus in the year that it was booked. And the county community reinvestment grants were set up, and also the return to each of the counties of a similar dollar amount for some of the county investment projects. The total of those three things was approximately $10 million. Despite that, we still managed to slightly grow our RBC because we did end up with a positive $6 million in earnings at the end of the day. So very good results for an interesting year last year. In terms of our external audit, Clifton Larson Allen remains our auditor. We finished the year once again with a clean or unmodified opinion. No difficulties encountered in the audit, no audit adjustments. South Country continues to have an ongoing history of strong, favorable audits, not only our external audit, but those that we get from regulatory agencies, et cetera. But we've had a very good experience with CLA and continue to have favorable results on our external audits. The next slide, the graphs, really kind of pulls together three key metrics there. The gold horizontal line, that's our 200% regulatory target. This is our entire history here, going back to 2002 through the end of last year. The red bar, or the red line, I should say, is our actual RBC results. And you can see, other than early on, we've hovered more around that regulatory requirement, only dipping under there twice back in that 2009 era And then back in the 2016 to 2018, where we dropped in 2018 was the last time we required a capital contribution. That was the result of losses in 2016, and then 2 years later in 2018, $10 million and a $12 million loss in those 2 years, with a small gain in between, took us under that 200%. And then we've had gains ever since until 2024, where we had a $21 million loss, which included that premium deficiency reserve that we booked. But you can see our ability to sustain such a loss back in 2024 was much better prepared for because of the RBC position we had built up from the gains that we had for several years. So despite the fact that we had a pretty significant loss in 2024, we're still hovering up there around 500%. The bars represent our surplus in millions, which is over on the left axis. And you can see we're still in that 40 to 50 million range of surplus and continue to be in a very solid financial position, where in healthcare, you're going to have, it's a cyclical business, just like many insurance, you're going to have some down years. And sometimes you have a couple of years like that in a row. And that's the purpose for having reserves. And so when we have a capital position like we do right now, of 2 to 3 times the regulatory minimum, you can survive a couple of years of downturn. And that's the position you want to be in. We don't want to be in a situation where we have a couple of tight years where we have to go back and have more capital infusion. And hopefully that's a case where we never have to be in that position again. Right now, we're in very solid financial position. So looking forward to 2026, we're projecting a positive number for 2026, driven by a significant enrollment growth. We did get awarded a single plan status for our PMAP program for all our member counties. And as I mentioned, a continuation of some of the work that brought us increased rates last year, in particular in the fourth quarter, was used to set the rates for 2026. So that combination brought us additional revenue, 6,300 additional PMAP members, approximately coming over January 1st from Blue Plus into our counties. And as we look at the key assumptions in our budget, an overall membership increase of about 36%. Revenue up about 49%. Of course, that's a combination of the 36% more members and pretty decent increases in our rates. PMAP rates over last year up about 17%. Minnesota Care up about 16%. SMBC, when you combine those lines together, about 9%. And our seniors lines up about 18%. I know many of you have been around for a while, probably remember rate increases 2, 3%, maybe 5% in some cases. So these double-digit rates are really, they're really unprecedented. Sadly, we need those to keep up with the increasing claim costs. And in particular, it's driven by utilization of both medical and pharmacy, not so much the actual cost of the service. Bit of an exception on pharmacy. Pharmacy rates are going up 8 to 10% in most cases, but when you get to the medical costs, they're still low to middle single digits. In most cases, they're 2, 3, 4% unit cost increases. It's really people utilizing those services at a much higher rate than they have been previously. That's what's driving those increases year over year. And as we look into 2026, it's still early, but what we're seeing so far is those utilization trends are continuing to grow. And we reported a small loss for the first quarter. This is something that we're gonna continue to dig into. We have, regular meetings set up with DHS and their actuaries, this year. As we started last year, ours is in June here. We're gonna be meeting with them and gonna be providing feedback on whether or not it looks like, even though we had pretty significant increases in the rate, are we seeing whether or not they're adequate this year? And whether or not they would entertain, possibly, bumping those again. And I'm sure they're gonna get, the same kind of feedback from the other plans. So this is something that, along with our actuaries, we are gonna be spending the next couple of months looking at that, what's driving that, and preparing for that discussion with DHS. What I can tell you is it's more medical so far this year than pharmacy. Was a much bigger driver last year. Again, small sample size, we just got a quarter. And I can tell you what it's not. Last year, we started out the year with 3 very large claims right from the get-go. 3 claims in excess of $1 million each. This year, that's not what's driving the high cost so far. So it's more the across-the-board utilization. And again, we'll be digging into that here over the next couple of months. Loss ratio in our budget, 91.4. If we achieve that, that's going to be almost a 2 percentage point improvement over prior year, about 4% improvement over last year's budget. And our administrative expense ratio, with our membership growth and the fact that our admin expenses in the budget aren't projected to grow that much, we budgeted to get that down to 9.0 this year from 9.9. And if we repeat what our performance has been over the last several years and finish under budget, we hopefully can get that under 9% at the end of this year. That's certainly a goal that we're going to try to achieve. For a plan our size, that would put us in the upper quartile in the nation for admin to revenue ratio. So I'm going to stop there. Solid performance last year, very solid surplus position. Budget for a small gain this year. Obviously our goal is to break even or better. This budget calls for $1.3 million. And as I mentioned, right now, the biggest thing we're looking at is medical expense trend and whether or not we think the rates are adequate, and to provide the right feedback to DHS here in the next couple of months when we meet with them. Any questions?
Oh, good work, thanks.
Thank you.
Got a question for you. Your 26 budget, that's revised as of the end of last month, or there's a lot of moving targets on here?
Yeah, we set the budget late prior year when the rates are established. That's really the last thing that we get. And of course, with the rates changing so much, we got those pretty late. And of course, the membership targets as well, finding out that we're going to get single plan status was really a godsend for our budget. It made us be able to really kind of right size everything. This was set late last year. We don't adjust it. In other words, we don't operate and change the budget into a forecast, although middle of this year we'll start to look at that. Where do we expect to come in for 2026?
Yeah, I was just curious on your assumptions of, you got a lot of moving targets. Membership increase at 36%. I don't know how you forecast all that stuff, but I wish them well.
Yeah.
Well, 6,300,
Yeah, the biggest-
which is almost that much,
So those were the assumptions that were used to set the budget. And our budget is really always based on a lot of assumptions because we never know for sure what membership's gonna be. We don't know what claims are gonna be.
Yep.
We did, with this one, we actually did have a pretty good idea of what that increased membership was going to be because DHS did announce that they were gonna be moving us back to single plan status for that under age 65 Medicaid population. So we were able to look at what was the current membership in each of our counties in the other plan. So we had a good idea that we were gonna receive about between 6,000 and 6,500 new members come the first of the year. So that one, we actually had some pretty solid projection on for a change.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott on the financial information? Okay, then I just have a few updates. There were a couple of really significant events that the state was moving towards for our 1/1 effective date, 1/1 of 27 effective date. One of the things that they were moving forward with was implementing a single state pharmacy benefit manager. And what this would have meant is the pharmacy benefits would have been removed from managed care, so we no longer would have had any responsibility for managing or paying claims for pharmacy. We were really concerned about that because the pharmacy information is pretty much real-time information. We know at the end of the day, you know, what claims were paid, and we use that information for care coordination, for identifying members who have complex medical conditions, all of those types of things. And so we were really concerned about what the impact that would have, not to mention the increased risk of additional medical costs if members weren't able to access the medications that they needed through this single state PBM. We did find out in, I believe it was kind of early February, that was going to be delayed until 1/1/28. So we were very pleased about that. It gives us another session to work towards maybe trying to influence that not happening at all. The other thing that they were moving forward was going to a centralized non-emergency medical transportation system as of 1/1/27. And again, huge concerns about this. A lot of state policy tends to be very metro-centric. It very much shows itself within the requirements that they have for non-emergency medical transportation, such as you shouldn't be transporting someone more than 30 miles for a primary care visit or 60 miles for specialty services. That's not realistic in rural communities. We don't have the robust public transit systems that they have within the metro area. So again, this was something that we were very opposed to. The same day that we found out that the single state PBM was gonna be delayed, we found out that the state had actually canceled the RFP for the centralized non-emergency medical transportation. So those were two big wins in our opinion. Again, it could have had a very significant impact on other medical costs, just with members having difficulty either accessing transportation or pharmacy. So that is something though, we know that it is likely to resurface next session. So we definitely are keeping our eye on it. We're continuing to work in the off session, and sharing our concerns about the impact on both of those things on rural communities. Related to our procurement court case, as you'll recall, it went to the Supreme Court after many, many, many months of just sitting there. The Supreme Court dismissed it. And in September, the Court of Appeals entered a judgment remanding it back to the district court. We have been trying to move towards resolution with this, trying to kind of reach some type of a settled agreement with DHS and the other health plans. Still not quite there. One of the concerns that we have is that within the agreement, DHS wants to try and maintain some flexibility that was included in the karma language. And so I'm gonna kind of jump there a minute. As you recall, we have legislation passed last session for karma, the county administered rural medical assistance model. At the time that that language was being developed, we didn't know, the decision from the court yet, and so there was some language in there that gave the commissioner of DHS some discretion to continue to put another plan in there for individuals who were dually eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. Court of Appeals decision is very clear that we should be single plan for all of our products. And so we brought forward an amendment for that karma language to get the language in the karma bill aligned with the Court of Appeals decision. There is still a little bit of flexibility in there, but it is very limited in that the commissioner in the karma language would only be allowed to put another plan in our area if there was no karma option available. So if for some reason we said we're not gonna do this product, the state would be able to put another plan in there. In the settlement, DHS is still trying to kind of say, well, yep, this is the way it is, but we wanna maintain the flexibility that's in the karma statute. So it's very significant to us to try and get that karma amendment passed so that it would align and would not be a major issue. So where we're at with the court case right now, there is a status hearing that's scheduled till June 1st. We're just kind of on hold until we have the outcome of session and to know whether our amendment to the karma language got passed. If it gets passed, then we'll proceed with requesting the court dismiss the case without prejudice. And we would do that because at this point, DHS is indicating they are going to give a single plan back for the remainder of the products as of 1/1/27. So we'll see some additional growth again at that point. By dismissing it without prejudice, it gives us the ability, if the state doesn't follow through with what they're saying, we can take it back to the court. With the karma amendment, those were the bills that it was initially attached to. Those bills were moving forward. So most recently, the karma amendment language has been attached to Senate File 4612. It was also in House File 4466, so we identified some of the bills. So it is still in motion at this point. The two bills, Senate is doing an omnibus bill, House is doing individual bills, so they don't completely align. That's gonna have to be worked through in conference committee and resolved. I did just identify that the conferees were identified yesterday, and I'm feeling optimistic about it because the individuals that are on the conference committee on both the Senate and the House have been supporters of county-based purchasing and karma. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we are going to get that across the finish line and get that language passed. And if we do, then that also sets the stage to bring kind of the court case across the finish line as well. We did have one other bill that was introduced in both the House and Senate, did not move forward, it didn't get hearings, but we were calling it a carve-out prevention bill. And so if you'll recall, those two things that I talked about initially, that the state keeps trying to take services that are part of managed care currently and take them back under central control at DHS. We introduced a bill to try and prevent that for county-based purchasing plans. It doesn't totally prevent it, but it would make it much more difficult for the commissioner to do that because it would require them to do some specific evaluation and study of what would be the impact within our area if those things were put in place. So it's still out there. We're fully anticipating that we'll be bringing that back next session, and so continuing to try and find strategies to prevent those situations that I initially talked about from occurring in the future. And with that, those are the updates that I have, but happy to respond to any questions or concerns that you may have.
Go ahead.
We go to, it was Kennebec, is that how you pronounce that county? Kennebec. So they pulled out of our agreement.
Correct.
Do we have any other counties that are concerned, considering, or it's pretty,
No.
pretty solid?
I think our membership is very, very solid at this moment, and I think if we are successful in getting that karma language passed and getting this Court of Appeals settled, I think we have the opportunity to, at some point here within the next couple of years, to have some conversations that with other counties that might have considered it in the past, but got anxious about it because we were seeing so much instability. I think having the stability that's there now with kind of the changes that we've seen occurring, there may be some opportunity.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
So, obviously, there's a cost to fight this, or go court. Is that a shared cost that there's another county-based purchasing?
There's actually two other counties.
Do we do this together, and is it I don't know if the term is class action, probably not the right term, but.
Not a class action, but we jointly filed, the lawsuit between all three county-based purchasing plans. So all of the legal costs that we've had related to that have been shared amongst the three plans, and it's been shared based on membership. So Prime West has actually had the majority of the cost, because they have more counties and more membership. Itasca County being a very small single county has had the least, so we've been in the middle. I think ours has been, about 35% of the cost, Itasca around 10, and Prime West bearing the rest of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Leona? Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. We'll see you again in the fall.
Do we need to have some heat on in here?
I wish I had access to heat.
Is the
Jake,
heat,
can you help?
is the heat off, or?
It might be.
Yeah, okay.
I see Annette shivering back there. She's getting closer to Troy every second.
Let's okay, I'm gonna put Annette in the hot seat along with a few other people, so maybe that'll warm her up. Why don't you guys come on up? So, Mr. Chair, if I may, while we're getting settled, a little over a year ago, the board authorized an RFP process to solicit project proposals to use our affordable housing money. So this is aid that we're given from the state. We have some timelines in terms of when we can use it, but we have some very stringent eligibility criteria under which the dollars can be used. We reached out to all four of our cities. The city of Owatonna was the only city that put in a proposal. That was reviewed by the board last October, and then I provided an update here about a month or so ago, and the board had a few more questions, and so I thought it might make sense just to bring sort of the steering committee that's working on this project to a board meeting to hopefully reach a point where the board is confident in moving this to a regular board meeting for a decision on granting. We're asking for $200,000 to be awarded to Owatonna. There are some stipulations which we'll walk through in just a moment. But the goal of this is to develop 10 affordable housing units. It now actually has a name. Is it the Partridge Project? I think that's what it's been dubbed. But it's very much a collaborative project that involves the city of Owatonna using their affordable housing money. United Way did receive a $300,000 grant from HUD. Habitat for Humanity is a partner at the table. We also have Three Rivers CAP as a partner at the table that would help with the recruitment process and making sure that buyers meet eligibility criteria and that sort of thing. Roger Wareheim was kind of part of our steering committee, just helping to keep us all grounded and more importantly, keeping the project moving forward. So his involvement in this, I think, will be much missed. But I think we're at a really good place in terms of addressing many of the concerns that the board had. So in your board packet on page 9, we kind of walked through an outline of actions, because one of the things the board was concerned about was they didn't want to be the first dollar in and then the project not go forward. So we wanted to make sure that the project would be sufficiently launched and progressing before the county would ever contribute to the project. And so you're seeing that there's a number of different elements to this project, from getting the lots accessible, building in the utilities and infrastructure that are necessary, doing obviously the platting to carve out these 10 lots, working through with Habitat and Three Rivers to identify buyers, and beginning that project and making sure that we've got a good solid plan for getting these homes built. And then ultimately creating that legacy that the board was concerned about, which is how do we maintain financial affordability for others in the future. And there had been a fairly involved conversation, and we modeled it very much after how Habitat for Humanity does it, where they have this kind of reinvestment process. But then we had to also talk through, well, who is going to manage that reinvestment process? Because it would have to be a retained interest in the actual real estate sale itself. Somebody would have to keep it on the books for a period of time and track it and that sort of thing. And United Way of Steele County was willing to step up and be that partner, because as this is structured, the city will develop the neighborhood, subdivide the lots. They will convey those lots to United Way, so United Way will be the seller to each of those 10 buyers, and that will give United Way the interest to be able to include that covenant in the deed by which the new owner takes title, that obligates them to reinvest any equity that might be achieved within, and in this case, we mirrored it after Habitat for Humanity. We used a 10-year window, that any equity that would be achieved within those first 10 years of ownership would then be recycled back to United Way to be reinvested in affordable housing. And the last piece before I'll turn it over to this group, and unfortunately the screen went dark on me, but in your packet on page 16, you'll see there's a visual that was created by WIDSA. Now there's some lines in there that suggest that this could easily be a 20-lot development. There is no intention to develop those other lots. The lots that are shaded in green would be the only 10 lots that would be developed as part of this project. The rest of that area will be open space, green space. It will be there for stormwater management, other maybe some shared amenities, but ultimately the only lots in consideration are the 10 that are indicated. You'll see that there's 4 that front on Partridge. They are likely to be the first lots developed once the utilities are confirmed for that site and once the lots are platted, knowing that we'll have to extend utilities into that cul-de-sac before those next 6. So right now Habitat has indicated a desire to develop that first lot with a timeline of having that launched by fall of 27, because the platting process will take some time. And then as soon as the infrastructure is in, so that we are ready to really develop that first lot, then an ask would be made of the county to then turn over the $200,000 of our affordable money. And we are under a time frame that those dollars, that first amount, would have to be used by the end of 2027. So the timeline that's being proposed here would allow us to have timely used, and I think it's just the 2024 money. By that timeline, we would have an extra year or 2 for the rest of it. But the ask of the board is to commit to that $200,000 of those affordable housing dollars, so that meets the criteria that United Way had, that allows Troy to go back to the city to take it through to get his council's approval for their dollars, because it's not technically a match, but they do have affordable housing money that they've received that would be added to the United Way money for that initial build out, and then our dollars would come in when we're ready, kind of at that final dollar. So I'm going to try to get the screen back up, but I'm going to turn it over to this group, and I don't know who wanted to kind of weigh in, but.
Well, just to give you a little overview, so yeah, you can see the lines in that gray area are the existing flats. The storm pond is sort of in the middle of all of that. There's probably 3 or 4 existing houses on Partridge currently, and the green lots are the ones, the vacant lots on Partridge, and then the new cul-de-sac in there. So we got engineer's estimates from Whitsett that build out would be, a little over 700,000. And so we too have affordable housing dollars that we need to spend by the end of 2027. And so with the 300,000, 200,000, and we'll probably be a little over 200,000, you know, we felt like we could, accomplish, creating these lots that would be conveyed to United Way for, the build outs and, the agreements with each of the property owners. So, the rest of that up there would be, remain owned by the city. The storm pond would be, remain ownership by the city and kept, you know, green space. And our access to the pond would be off of that right of way, on the other side there, so. Any questions?
Jerry, do you wanna talk about how the Habitat Reinvestment Program works?
Yeah, I think, all of you are aware that affordable housing is something that is needed. And, here at Habitat, you know, we try our best to not only acquire property that we can utilize, but then build that house so that it is a good structure, but within in a framework that when a person comes and applies, we're keeping it at the 30% of their monthly income. So that's kind of what Habitat works through. So to do that, obviously, we have to find a process, and for us, we've narrowed it down to a 3-bedroom home. Usually, right now, we're estimating about $250,000 per unit. And so with that first initial mortgage, we'll be working potentially with USDA on that, and that usually will keep that at either zero, probably 1 to 3%, depending on what the person qualifies for. So that keeps that first mortgage really low for the potential home buyer. And then we layer products that Habitat has, whether it's down payment assistance that we work with the state of Minnesota on, or it's our own, you know, mortgage that we'll do at 0%. So that way it keeps that process in the works. And to do that, then we enter a covenant with the home buyer that, you know, up to 10 years, it's a step down process for how much equity they would receive if they had to sell the home. Typically, we always in our mortgages, we write first right of refusal. So that way, if they have a life incident that takes place and in that first, second year, they have to sell the home, we're the first one to come back. And typically, if it's in a good spot, we've done that a number of times here in Owatonna, we'll buy the home back, recycle it back into the process. But if it starts to age, you know, and usually our mortgages are 20-year to 30-year mortgages typically. If it's beyond that, then we would, you know, that equity that's built by the individual then will be there. So that's kind of what we shared with the group, is that it's a tiered system so that the home buyer obviously can acquire equity in the process. But if they try to sell too early, and it does happen sometimes where they come into a situation, we can get that back, give them what their portion of the equity is, and then reinvest that affordable house back into the community. And that's kind of the nuts and bolts of Habitat and keeping it moving. And these properties for us are a great opportunity for our continued partnership with the Owatonna High School students. So they have helped us a couple of years ago build our home in Chatfield. They built the walls, we shipped them down. We finished a home last year on Vine Street that went to a home buyer. We're finishing a home right now on Sage Lane that's slated for a veteran. If anybody knows a veteran who's still looking for a home, we're working through that. And then all of these properties, we're working with the students to help them learn a skill, learn a trade, and keep that moving in the community. So that's what keeps our costs down, to continue to pass that on to the home buyer.
So you used the term, if it's in a good spot. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we try to stay away from floodplains, because that you know, if it's in a flood zone related piece, that increases the insurance cost. We try to work with the community on, you know, making sure that our cost for the actual lot isn't going to exceed anywhere from 30 to 50,000. And we try to keep it under 30,000. So if you're in a neighborhood where the lot's going to go for 100,000, that's too much for us to afford, and to keep it affordable. So that's where, when I'm saying a good spot, it's typically in a community where we could find that lot. Sometimes communities will offer lots that have an existing structure on them, and then we have to kind of evaluate whether or not we can rehab that structure, or we would need to tear that structure down to build on top of that land. So keeping it under 50,000 is kind of our goal. We'd like to stay closer to 30,000 a month for a piece of land if we can. So that's, sometimes they're narrow lots, sometimes they're wide lots, so that's kind of what we look for. Yeah.
In your
any proposals, I guess, through Habitat, and I'm gonna refer to, the transitional housing model.
Yeah.
These are first-time home buyers. Do you offer any kind of services as far as budgeting and financing and that sort of stuff? As far as making sure that they're doing the right things and all of that, so they are successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something we've been building out at Habitat. Habitat's had that as part of the process for years, and we're continuing to build that out. So we go through a pretty extensive selection process. Anybody can apply, and then we work through. There'll be some that may not qualify because of credit. They may not qualify because they have debt that's, would overwhelm that 30% even of income. And so we'll work with those individuals to get them on track, but then when somebody is selected through our board process, we're preparing them during those initial conversations through the sale, and then we have follow-up visits with them after the sale. Because, our goal is to keep them in that house as long as they want to be there. So have you thought about the fact that 7 years from now, when our warranty process is done, you might have to do something with shingles on the roof, or you have to do something with furnace, and that's the biggest piece. And setting aside money, that's also why we look for the best insurance value. So can we find a spot where their insurance is hopefully going to be in a stable spot? So yeah, that's all through the process we work with them.
I only had one other question, and with United Way being the lead agency, and I know you get funding coming in from more places than I can believe you get funding coming in from, but that's a good thing. Will this HUD money and that be in a dedicated account with United Way?
So all of our different programs and projects that we have get dedicated to their allocated.
Okay.
So
Okay,
it'll
you didn't say that in
only-
there, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
It'll literally go shoot in for 5 seconds and then just go. So,
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
a question on, I don't know how to phrase this. So you're asking for our approval for the 200,000.
Correct.
What is our level of involvement as it relates to site selection, for example?
No.
Is that the city making that determination, or who makes the determination on site selection? Because my question is, how do we land here? Because I believe earlier when there was some talk about pouring some pads and doing something different and kind of shift it over to this model or this.
Yeah,
How do we land here?
well, through a number of trials of different sites and the parameters of the dollars, each site has to go through an environmental review and be approved by HUD through that. And so the scattered lots all over didn't work because we have to do an environmental review on each of those. We looked at, I think, the mobile home park at one point in time to do something there. That didn't work because of the mobility of them and the purchase. Remember, all the things presented problems with that. So then we were looking for one chunk of land, and this was already city owned. We actually bought it for the storm pond, but we knew we had more there than what we needed, and it was always intended that the housing would be developed around it. Since the HRA owned it, we went through the environmental review process because if we're gonna develop it regardless, they funded the dollars to go through that environmental review. So, just availability and, an easier, process to go through. This is the one that rose. We didn't have to purchase anything, it was already purchased, and that was part of the city's contribution, is we own land to put towards it, and so it sort of came together that way.
So I've had some community pushback on the site from the neighbors. They like the green space, they like the pond, they don't want. And among other things, people, of course, make comments and we hear it all. But then I have had some people pushing back and not happy with the idea that this site be developed into housing. So that's why I'm asking what other sites are available, if any, and if not, if this is the only site, then.
If I can just go back to the process, so HUD is really fun to work with, anybody's worked with them before, right? So, we were allocated funds by our governors, they got us the funds, they got written to the bill, but then they said, but now we're gonna send it over to HUD. And so, part of where like even costs went up was that whole HUD process alone was over a year. So between filling out their application and going through their assessments, and we actually had to do an environmental assessment because of the size of the land, which is a little bit more than the review. And by the time they approved that, this is where we got to. We had looked at several other pieces of property, and to get through the HUD process the way that it was outlined, it was gonna be next to impossible to be able to try to piece that all together. This was not where we first landed. We had planned on, could we do things throughout the community? And based off of the criteria of HUD, it was just not feasible. If we didn't have to go through HUD, this would be a different conversation if they would have just allocated the funds as it was initially, under my understanding, intended. We would have had the funds to then go and purchase individual lots. But with the environmental assessment complete piece to that and all the requirements that each piece of land had to have, this was our best option.
And, you know, when the city purchased this, it was to address the storm, but we also knew there was this additional land there that we were intending to develop for housing in some form or fashion somewhere down the road. So, I mean, that is our intention, whether it goes through this, process or not. I mean, our intention is to develop the rest of that for housing, whether it's get a developer in to do it or something. So, which is why Jerry felt confident enough to go through some of this pre-work done, because regardless if it happens through this project or another, I mean, we don't wanna sit on land just to we wanna put it into production and get houses built on it. So, I think this made a lot of sense, addressed a lot of needs, and provided some funding to get this accomplished, but I mean, should it not go this route, I think our intentions are still that it will be developed. So if it's a question from the neighborhood of whether it will or won't, and we will, there's no zoning approvals yet, I mean, we will go through public hearings for the planning of the property. I've talked to a few neighbors out there, I've talked to the association, you know, like I said, we will go through the due process on this. We go through the public hearings, we'll have, you know, people can provide input on it and such, so, we're not getting through any of that. It'll go through the normal process, whether it was a different developer or the city or whoever, it'll still go through that process. So there will still be more input opportunities for the neighbors to provide input.
So when you get to your public hearings, and then the people will find out, are these tin colors, are they all identical floor plan, different colors, or, you know, what size they can be, or how's that all? You must have them all picked out already, or?
We have, we're gonna probably build the same starter home. We can obviously vary the siding, but it'd be a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, starter home is what Habitat will build, as far as the others are not.
Yeah, so there will be other houses by other builders, so there will likely be different styles.
Yeah, I was just curious if you're building a 2-story with the top done, and they can, the bottom, some used to do it with the bottom was just studded out, people could finish them to make whatever they want and add value at that time too.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of a starter home, it's usually rambler with unfinished basement, and gives the owner opportunity to finish out the basement, give a couple more bedrooms and bathroom in there. I mean, that's probably
But the ones on Walnut there, though, those vary, and there's a couple 2-stories and some, 1-stories in that there, so.
Will require a minimum of 2 bedrooms. The initial plan was to have unfinished basements and then bring in individuals who could help them learn how to finish out their basements. That was part of the initial plan when we submitted this to the governors. So a minimum of that, that the process that we're gonna go through with Three Rivers is an open RFP to builders, letting them know what our criteria is, and then allowing them to apply for it. Rice County's had a lot of success with this process, and so we'll be following the process that they use there. So there will be variation.
Nice size homes, I mean,
Yeah.
over a year ago, I think I heard rumors about mini homes and stuff like that, but that might have been just talked about.
That was
That's what
when,
I'm
that was when the mobile home park was involved in the process.
Typically ours are slab on grade, but we're open to, doing the unfinished basement. It's another avenue that students get to explore as well, a part of their learning and education process. So certainly open to making sure that, because I think our goal is we want folks to get into these homes and feel part of the community. And I think that's the biggest piece for us is we're continuing to not only educate the home buyer, but also educate the community that these are not low income houses. And I think there's a stigma that's placed on that, and obviously there may be a stigma when it comes to Habitat homes. What we're trying to do is make an affordable house for somebody to have a hand up as opposed to, a hand out. And I think that's our biggest goal, and that's what our selection criteria is pretty strict. It's just like if they go down to the community bank and try to get a loan, we work through that. We just have a little bit more flexibility in how we can offer additional products to bring that cost down. We really, typically we're 30 to 60% AMI, but we can go as high as 80% AMI. Our last home here that we sold went for a little bit over 60% AMI. So we're trying to make sure that the first person or families that go into those homes feel a part of the community. They hopefully will be from the community, but some may choose to come from outside the community and they want to be welcome. And we want that for our home buyers as well. So that's another piece that we consider when we're looking at where are we going to build our home. We serve 5 counties through our Habitat. Next year we're building a home in Waseca. We were looking for land ourselves, and then this project came available. And so that's part of our selection criteria as well. We're considering part of the community as we build that home.
So you're saying they would be considered low income?
They're not low income, no, these are affordable houses, so they still would need to qualify for a mortgage typically like anyone would qualify out in the, if you go to Town Country Bank or wherever you want to go.
So again, I'm sorry, but, so this was a proposal made to the board last fall. We've been trying to make sure that all of your questions were asked. We're at the point now where we are looking for the board to bring this to a regular board meeting to formally approve the 200,000 that's been requested. So I wanna make sure that the board has the answers. That's why all of these folks are here. So if you do have other questions, but I'm hoping that there's consensus amongst the board to bring this forward to tonight's regular board meeting, or as an alternative perhaps the next, but we do want to get that commitment. Again, the dollars won't be paid out until the infrastructure is built, but we do need that commitment for those dollars.
Any other questions from the board? Are we willing to put that on the agenda tonight? I would move it forward to the agenda. Yeah. Everybody else?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, then that will go on your regular agenda under work session items. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
everyone.
Mr. Chair, Ashley kind of is prepared to talk for the board kind of a timeline. So I don't know if in 3 minutes, if you want to just walk them through what you prepared.
Well, I would just a brief overview in 2 minutes that I provided you an anticipated timeline for preparing the CIP process, budgeting process, as well as what it looks like for us to work through this summer for our 2027 budget. So I think the one thing is that we would like to request maybe a work session prior to the board meeting on June 9th to review a proposed rapid CIP plan.
That'd be part of our normal work session?
It would be a 2:30 or 3 o'clock pre-meeting, like we've done now for fleet and for facilities management. You have a full work session that night, so this would not, you would not have time in your agenda to go through the working CIP plan that night.
So 3 o'clock?
Would that work for the most?
That would be the majority. If not, we can look at a different date. It's just a proposal, that's why I have it in mind for you.
If we need more time, we can do it again.
I'm sorry.
If we need more time, we can add it for another work session also.
So I'll get the appointments out then for 3 o'clock on June 9th. Our hope is that this would be the opportunity for you to ask questions about the CIP. There's two components to it, which is more the long term. This is not your facilities master plan. This is just your maintenance, your kind of routine year-over-year capital investments. It'll be a multi-year plan with a focus on those that we would like to undertake in 2027, with them the corresponding anticipated funding source. Is this something that has a funding source? Is this something where we'd be looking to use levy dollars like we have in the past for roofs, HVAC units and that sort of thing? So that would be presented as part of that working session, but then our hope would be to bring it to the board on June 23rd as part of your regular meeting for formal adoption, because that then will be built into budget assumptions as we go through the budget work sessions in July and August. So if you needed more time, absolutely, it'll be there for you, but I just wanted to map out our expectation was to have that work session and then 2 weeks later, ask the board for more formal consideration.
I just want to make a quick comment. I think this CIP process overview is well done. I think it takes not only projects under consideration, but also finances and ultimately the taxpayer.
Any questions on the timeline?
No.
Make this adjourned. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.